Let's talk about eye makeup prep. So apparently having oily eyes is just a thing that some of us have. I know that my eyes get oddly wet sometimes throughout the day. I don't know what I thought it was. I don't know if I thought it was common, if it was like a genetic, I don't know. I just know it happens. And as a result, I've always known that I need to take like extra care when prepping my eyes for eyeshadow, because if I don't, everything will become a muddy mess. My eyes are also very creasy, so I always take extra care when prepping my eyes. I'm going to talk a little bit about some techniques that I found useful in prepping my oily, wrinkly eyelids. So I used to do the concealer method, where essentially I would put a concealer on my eye and then set it with powder, and then I would go on top with my shadows of choice. This is a good method for someone who does not currently have an eyeshadow base and you're just trying to find a way to just tame them lids. The only caveat with the concealer method is that you really have to set your eyes. If not, it will be an even creasier mess than if you would have done nothing.
Hey y'all, this is Editing Asia. I also want to say for that method that it does not work well with liquid or cream eyeshadows. So because you are quite literally putting a creamy or liquid concealer on your eye and then setting it with powder, it wouldn't work to go back on top with another liquid or creamy product. What it'll do is it'll kind of move your concealer around, or your powder will get in the way. It'll make the shadow chunky and not work well. It's just, yeah, so that is another thing for that method. But if you're just doing purely like powder eyeshadows, look, you guys see that my lid is wet right now. You see that? My goodness. Anyways, but if you're just doing like strictly powder shadows, I find too that can even be easier to blend because you're working on top of a blurring powder already. Yeah, so I just want to add that in too.
And on top of that, your eyeshadows won't glide on as easily because you're trying to craft a look using powders on a wet base. Not gonna work out well. If you do the concealer method, set with the powder, dry your eyelids down. What I would also do with that method is once you are finished with your eyeshadow look, I will go back on top with a setting powder and just set your eyelids over it. That was like my seal the deal moment. Keep it solid throughout the entire day. However, with that, you do have to be careful because if you have a setting powder that is blurring, it will also blur your shadow. So if you have harsh lines, maybe did a cut crease, I would be careful with that. It could tone down the saturation of the color depending on the color of your setting powder. So just another little caveat with that one. For the most part, that method worked for me. It kept my eyelids locked and solid, looking the same from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. Method number 2 is using a eyeshadow primer. Now, I wasn't the biggest primer girly, but really, I think an eyeshadow primer is the best way to go about priming your eye. Are all eyeshadow primers made equal? No. So it can be about trial and error. One that I found that I actually really do like is the Urban Decay eyeshadow primer potion. Does actually help bring out more of the pigment of your shadows. I think it does have a little bit of like a tacky feel. I think just a little bit. It goes on with like a little bit of a light color, at least on my skin tone, but that's not a problem. I actually prefer to work on a lighter base on dealing with color, because a lot of times color shows up a lot better on lighter bases. And then with this one, a little bit goes a long way. So honestly, it is one that I would recommend. And then if you really want that extra protection, you can go back on top with a powder at the end of your eyeshadow application. Another method I have is using like creaseless eye pigments. One product I know and have used personally that works is the paint pots by MAC Cosmetics. I have used them on clients. Actually, it was one of my favorite products to pick up when I was doing makeup at a counter because it worked so well. As a base, I'll use the matte shades. I think the one that I picked up most was either Land Low or Painterly. I think it was Painterly. I think Painterly is one of the lighter ones. I just like took a little bit and just kind of coated the entire eye from the top of the lash line until the, like where I put the concealer underneath the eyebrows, just to give me a good flat base to work off of. It made the shadow application process a lot easier because again, it did not crease. It did not move. I could even apply shadow and then go back on top to do a cut crease with the same paint pot and it still turned out good. It just sat really, really well on the eye. I have also heard of the brand Louise, which I have not tried yet. It's on my bucket list though. I heard that their, I think it's eye pigments, are also gorgeous. They have a lot of colors. I think theirs are more on like more bright, bright solid colors. The ones from MAC, they have like shimmer shades and they have some like regular like flat matte colors. Not super, super bright, but I definitely want to try out the Louise ones. I heard they're great. But when picking something like that with color, you want to make sure that it can spread evenly, that it's not super difficult to work with, it doesn't dry down super fast, and you want to make sure you can build on top of it. Super important. I will say with the paint pots that they do dry down pretty matte, so if you're working on dry eyelids, I recommend like prepping your eyelids beforehand or settling for something else that's a little less dry. I know pre-prepping is not really ideal, but they are a little bit dry. And again, for that extra protection, you could always go back on top of that eye with a bit of setting powder. And as far as picking colors for these pigments, I would suggest always going with a light shade. That's how I explain this entire, it's not even a theory, it's just facts. It's easy for people to conceptualize why certain things don't work on certain skin tones if they're not made to work for those skin tones. Imagine you're painting. Most paintings are done on a light tan or white canvas, right? Everything goes on just fine. You know, imagine you're just doing a painting on a white canvas. Just a regular painting. It's normal, right? Imagine trying to do that same painting on a dark brown canvas. Same paints, nothing changed. If your paints are not made with enough pigment to work on that brown palette, it's gonna look muddy, it's not gonna show up, it's not gonna work. So I think when prepping an eye base, if you don't have like a banging eyeshadow primer, go with a lighter base if you don't want your primer to be a part of your look. So for example, let's say that Louise has a pink pigment, right? Don't do the pink pigment if you want something you can use universally. It's the same theory. Imagine working on a pink canvas and maybe you want to do a smoky eye. Is it going to work? Let's say in theory that Louise, it won't work on a Louise base. Go with white. You will likely get the color's true color on top of white. I'm almost certain there are some white eyeshadow bases out there as well. I know that nobody asked for this video, but I hope that was helpful to somebody. I do want to do a video comparing an eyeshadow look with an eyeshadow primer and without an eyeshadow primer. So do like comparison, like one eye I have it on, one eye I don't. If you're interested in that, let me know. Oh, let me interject this last little tip. If you do your eyeshadow first, set your eyeshadow with a finishing spray, a dry finishing spray preferably, and then start on the rest of your face.